Okay, everyone, welcome to YouTube Live. I'm checking for glare. It is late afternoon on the West Coast, coming up on 2 o'clock here. I know there's been a daylight savings time. Have you noticed that it gets so much darker, so much earlier? Like, it used to be light all night, and now, like, by 5 o'clock, it's getting really, really dark. And I just think that there's some math that doesn't work out there with the whole daylight savings time thing. But I hope you're enjoying your week. It's Friday as we come to the end of another week. A lot going on. We have Mercury in retrograde starts on November 9th. We're coming off of a full moon. I can tell you that the clinic has been rocking and rolling. A lot of people needing help. A lot of the overall anxiety and energy is intense. And again, this is my own sort of anecdotal, see people every day. I just had group supervision with the clinicians, and they're reporting a lot of anxiety, a lot of people anxious about the shutdown, anxious about the economy, anxious about the global wars, anxious about the elections, and so on. And so I know many of you are in the helping professions, and so I offer you these lives as an opportunity to get some more information about human relationships, human development, psychology, psychiatry, uh, spiritual matters, huna, and so on. Today I want to talk about human relationships because that's been coming up a lot, and we're going to do some nicely structured uh, activities today that I think some of you are going to appreciate. And I get mixed reviews. I mean, they're always good. You guys are very, very tolerant and very patient. And Aurelia is here and Joshua is here. Welcome. And so, I tell stories. Some of you love the stories. Some of you want the concrete bullet points. And you love the handouts and worksheets and structured spreadsheets and all that kind of stuff. Today, I'm going to offer you some models around human relationships to look at, which I think are really helpful to look not only at your own interpersonal relationships, but professional relationships, relationships of all kinds. So when I say the word relationship, I do mean that in a more generic sense, and that we have, as humans, all different kinds of relationships, from familial, collegial, romantic, platonic, friendship, things like that. And so there are some pretty specific building blocks to building life affirming relationships, to building, maintaining, nurturing long term relationships. And one of my mentors in hypnosis was a man named Milton Erickson. And for those of you that work with other people, Dr. Erickson was a psychiatrist in the 20th century, and he's considered by many to be the father of modern hypnosis. I certainly have studied many of his writings coming up with getting my doctorate, as I have, in clinical hypnotherapy. And he said, there are no resistant clients, merely a lack of rapport. So I will repeat that. There are no resistant clients, merely a lack of rapport. And what I've found out, and you've heard me joke about, I work with teenagers, and I can talk about BTS, and I can talk about video games, and I can talk about things beyond my generation, not with any great expertise. But the idea, we talked about it in group supervision today with the clinicians, this idea that you were talking a lot about documentation and charting, what are you putting in your chart? And I realized that this is not a clinical arena specifically, but the bottom line is, for those of you that do work with clients, or for those of you, this is funny, sorry, for those of you that interact with humans, know that humans exist, have anyone in your life that you connect with, people want to be visible by you. They want to be seen by you. They want to be heard by you. Now, some of you have heard me say that people will repeat themselves when they don't feel heard. Now, this is an unconscious process. So this is a good way for us to get into our discussion, our dialogue today about human relationships. If you notice anyone of any age that's verbal, 3 or higher, 2 or higher, and they start repeating themselves a lot, unconsciously, the mind believes that they have not been heard. So I was on an airplane a few weeks ago, and there was a little girl. She looked like to be about 3 or 4, and she was flying with her daddy. And you know how the plane lands, and they turn off the fasten seatbelt sign, and people get up out of their seats and get their carry on, uh, out of the overhead bin and that kind of stuff. Get ready to exit the plane. And this little girl, very calmly at first, I was sitting across the aisle. She was sitting across the aisle from me. We both had aisle seats. Her dad was in a window seat, and she says, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy." Now he's 6 foot tall, and his ears are up by the overhead bin. And I really suspect that he just didn't hear her, because I could hear her, and she's looking up at him, saying, "Daddy." And it was cute. And then she looked at me, and she was getting frustrated. And, I kind of shrugged my shoulders. And she and I had a good rapport during the year. She was a good kid, lovely kid, and cute as hell. And finally, she screamed, "Daddy, you are not listening to me. I need you to come down here and listen to me," which was great. We all of us, kind of looked at her, because she clearly just kept repeating and repeating and repeating until she escalated to a point where she needed to get his attention. Now, ironically, I don't even remember what it was about. I think it was like, "Can we go get an ice cream in the airport?" Or something like that. But kept repeating herself, and I realized I'm bouncing, and so here we go. I don't know why the bouncing bothers me on YouTube, because I'm sure that with my clients, I set my computer on my lap with a little table, and I'm sure that I bounce all over all sessions all the time, and that for some reason doesn't bother me or anyone else. But with you guys, I don't want you to get seasick by watching this YouTube live. So, and then of course I just hit the thing. I can't win. What I need is a complete photo studio, with like a cameraman and all that stuff. Well, that's next. So people will repeat themselves until they feel heard. Now, in adults, they don't know they're doing it. I know I repeat myself quite a lot. Now, it's not necessarily because I don't feel like I'm being heard, but I work with a lot of different people. And so you'll hear me on here. You'll hear me say, some of you know this story. I'll tell a story, a clinical story or a patient story or a Huna story or something like that. And I'm completely aware that you may have heard it a bunch of times. Now, in a teaching context, for those of you that are teachers, educators, coaches, repetition isn't a bad thing. We learn by repetition. In fact, so tomorrow, this weekend, and next week, I'm teaching a level 1 Huna class, and there will be people assisting online. It's all online, that are going to hear the same stories, and they're going to do the same activities, and they're going to do the same meditations and the same exercises. And I've been doing it for 20 years, and I get something new every time. And so I don't have any negativity around being repetitive. What I'm talking about is when you are in relationship with someone, and someone really has some feedback for you or something that they would like to share, and you notice that you keep hearing the same stories. One of my tips, this is kind of, you can write this down if you want. I do it clinically. I do it when I do my best to feedback my understanding, of what they're saying, so that I know that they know that they were clear. And how you know someone feels heard is when you do feedback your understanding. They go, "Exactly," almost like you're the first person to ever hear them. And that's a technique, and it works very, very well. And so you can try that. "Oh, are you saying?" And again, you can sound really hokey and overly like you took a class. "Oh, what I hear you saying is that you're frustrated by the behavior of your children," or something like that. And you can sound super hokey. Or you can just say, "Oh, are you saying that it's really upsetting to you that dot 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 happened?" And they're going, "Exactly." So when someone does the "exactly," wow, you really get it, they feel heard. And it's really validating in a relationship. We're going to get into some nuts and bolts about relationships, but this is just one example of how you can tell that people don't feel heard. Is you'll hear the same story again and again and again, in not a teaching context. I tell some of the same stories a lot, not because I don't feel heard, but because it's a new crowd. And those of you that have been with me for all kind of go, "Go, he's going to tell that one again," and you guys are very patient and tolerant with me. I'm unaware that I have organic brain syndrome, Alzheimer's, or dementia, and I don't want you to tell me if you think I do. I'd rather stay in this delusional bubble that I'm cognitively intact and just nod and smile whenever I tell the story, the same story again and again. The other tip that you can do when you're with a close family member and or a friend, like a best friend or a partner, and someone is telling you the same frustration about an issue, what I will say sometimes is, "What about this? Where do you not feel heard?" Now, I don't usually come at it from a very confrontational point of view, but I'll say, "Wow, you this has been going on for a while. What about this?" Like let's say your friend is venting about their relationship or venting about their kids or venting about anything, work, whatever we do. Because venting is very therapeutic. It's really very helpful to have a trusted, safe place. And a lot of times in therapy, people come in, I'm sitting here in my office and they come in and I say, "Hey, how's it going this week?" Or "What's up?" And that's the last words I say. And they're off to the races and they fill up the 50 minutes with what's going on, and they feel better after. So sometimes you are the trusted friend, and they just want you to listen. They don't want you to give advice. They don't want you to tell them what to do. They want you to validate and hear them. And you can do that by saying, "Wow, this sounds really frustrating." It is. It's really frustrating. Well, wow, you keep talking about your fill in the blank person. What about this and about them do you not feel heard? And that's a very powerful question. And usually that stops them dead in their tracks, where they'll go, "Well, I don't know." And then they'll pause and they'll think about it. And they'll say something like, "Well, they don't understand who I am, or they don't know my values, or they don't understand the implications of their behavior for me, or they're clearly oblivious to my needs." And today we're going to talk about needs and relationships. We're going to talk about communication and relationships and all that kind of stuff. And so your ability to be available for another person is huge. And it doesn't matter. I'm a therapist. I listen for a living. Clearly, I can talk and I can fill up all the air in the room if I need to. But my role, you would be surprised how little I actually talk. I know in this venue, and when you hear me in the training room, if I'm teaching or I'm working with a group, that I do a lot of the talking and most of the talking in a lecture sort of didactic way. My other skill as a therapist or as a coach, I do very little talking. It's very much more active listening, much more nodding, much more grunting, much more feeding back my understanding. And people need a place uh, anywhere. Now, I'm not suggesting that everyone has to be in therapy or everybody has to have a coach. But if you are that trusted friend or that trusted confidant, a lot of times, most of the time, they don't really want your advice. They just want to be heard, and they're not feeling heard. Whatever they're complaining about at work, or their boss, or their coworkers, or their partner, or their children, or whatever it is. So that's number one. What I want to talk about first, in terms of building relationship and the actual building blocks of relationships, and I'm going to actually put these things in the chat, and you can capture them. I don't think I hit chat replay, so if you're watching the replay, you may not see these, but you'll hear if you're watching the replay. So I want to talk first about how you first build relationship with people you don't know very well, and that is called levels of disclosure. And so there are levels that we go through that are sort of social norms. Um, Have you ever been to, like, in the grocery store, and you're just trying to be pleasant, or you're in the elevator in your apartment building, or you're running across a stranger, someone you've never met before, in a social situation or whatever, and you ask them how they are. "Hey, how's it going today?" And they tell you chapter and verse. Um, you know how that feels. And what we would say in a social context, that would be over disclosure. Now, when I'm traveling and I fly a lot on airplanes, I do not say that I'm a therapist. I don't really talk much, and I have these on, usually facing a direction. You many times trying to sleep or meditate, listening to music, that kind of stuff, and I send a nonverbal message. And I don't mean to be mean, but I send a very clear nonverbal message that I'm not really interested in conversation. Now, very few times in my whole life have I had to set a boundary. Other than that, this blanket pillow facing the window, you know, eyes closed, sleeping, is a pretty clear message that I'm not interested in conversation. Now, occasionally I will sit next to a nervous flyer who does not know that I specialize in anxiety and hypnosis. And there have been a few times, like less than five in my life, where somebody has just said, "Look, I am really a nervous flyer. Would you mind distracting me?" Or, and then I'll give them a little tip or a technique, or I'll hold their hand, or, whatever it is to help them with the nerves about flying. And certainly I'm not an asshole. I really am not. But I'm clear that I made a determination years ago that my flight time is not work time. My flight time is playtime, it's movie time, it's music time, it's quiet time. And so I'm not one of those guys in on the airplane that has the laptop open doing the spreadsheets and the emails and all that kind of stuff. My flight time is kind of sacred me time. And so I pretty much stick to that. But I'm not a jerk. If somebody's really struggling, I will certainly try to be there for them. Okay, so the first level of disclosure, think about it. You've had the experience of someone over disclosing, where they tell you way more, like TMI, too much information, like in a grocery store, or you don't know them and they're telling you the chapter and verse about their life story. And that feels weird and awkward because it violates implicit social norms. We, at least, just trying to think of all the countries I've lived in and traveled to, I think they're pretty universally human, that people don't, the stranger danger kind of thing, now I've been to cultures where they know no strangers, and they're very, very, and many African cultures, man, they just talk to everybody. Everybody talks, and I love that. It's just really great. But you know what I'm talking about when you're in a place and they over disclose. They tell you too much information about their, I don't know, money or their sex life or things that should remain personal, or their healthcare. Like, if heaven forbid people find out that I'm a doctor, it's like, oh my God, So people ask me what I do. Sometimes I'll just say I'm a teacher, and if they press, I'll say I'm a college professor, which I am. If they press, I will say that I work in psychology or mental health. And usually about three goes around. That's enough. I do not say that I'm a therapist. God knows I don't say that I'm a, 122nd generation Hawaiian lineage kumu of the healing arts of the ancient kahunas. That's a little bit off, but that would be over disclosure. It would shut them down, but it would be over disclosure. So imagine you are at a wedding. Have you ever been to one of those, like a wedding or a party or a bat mitzvah or a bar mitzvah, or some place where you don't know anybody? It's just one of those, I've been to weddings where I knew the bride of the groom and I didn't bring a plus one, and it was just me and you at a table of 10. Now, what do you talk about with people you don't know, that you've never met before? You're all dressed up before alcohol. And I'm snarky, and I'm kind of, actually got feedback from a client a couple of weeks ago that they didn't appreciate my irreverent humor until they got to know me a little bit. And it was a little off-putting. And I get it. And I'm trying to modulate it. But I kind of got to be me. So I'm me. So you're at the table of 10, you're on your first drink or a glass of wine, and what do you actually talk about when kinds of things. And this is the first level of disclosure, and I'm going to put it in the chat here, which is chit chat and cliche. Chit chat and cliche. Having an emergency. Hold on, I'm responding to it. All right, sorry about that. I was handling a clinical emergency here at the clinic. So the first one's chit chat and cliche. You talk about the weather. You talk about the sports team. You talk about innocuous, safe topics. You talk about maybe how you know the bride or groom, maybe where you live, but even that is a level of disclosure that's a little bit deeper. And so you talk about things that are pretty. I know that I can go to a sports bar in any place in America and sit at the bar and have a drink or a beer and have a burger. And if there is a sports team on the TV and it's a man, I can have I don't speak sports very well. I speak college football, hockey, not so much basketball, but what I typically do is like I do all the time, is let them talk about this player, this ref or that ref, and I just nod and smile and go, "Yeah, it was a bad play," whatever. And I just try to kind of but that's cliche. It's chit chat. It's very innocuous. It's very safe. It is not um, over disclosing. It is not intrusive and very easy. And that's the first level of disclosure. Now, you're still at the wedding, so you're talking about, that kind of thing. Second level of disclosure is called fact. Now, already at the level of fact, there is room for risk. And so you may disclose where you live, where you're from, what you do, what your job is. You may disclose how you know the bride or groom. You may disclose, but you may not disclose that you're struggling with a life threatening illness. You may not disclose that you're going through a divorce. These are facts, but they could be provocative. You may not disclose your age. You may not disclose your sexual identity or gender preference or whatever, your pronouns. I don't know. You may not disclose those things because even at the level of fact. Now, what we're looking at in terms of levels of disclosure, the goal is to transverse these levels to build relationship. And whether you like it or not, and whether you know it or not, it's essential that you start. And I know there are people that say, well, I don't like chit chat. I just want to cut to the chase. And if you know people that are overly direct and overly assertive and they just cut to the chase, they don't want no fluff. And those people can be perceived as off putting, abrupt, aggressive, too direct, that kind of thing. And so while I'm not a big on chit chat or cliche, I know how to do it. You all know how to do it. And we do it. And that's that's how it goes. And so second level is fact, which is, how do you know the bride? How do you know the groom? What do you do? Where do you live? Where are you from? You know, and then even now these days, you know my story. I am married. I am married to a man. That is a fact. And for many people, not so much lately, but that would be a provocative fact. In fact, I told you the story, a while ago where I got a really bad evaluation at a class on diversity when I disclosed that I was married to a man. There was one person in the class that really wasn't having it and thought that was so unprofessional that I threw that out there and threw it in his face. And so, it's fact. So then I'm going to, in this next line, I'm going to draw a line because this line refers to safety. And the deeper in the levels of disclosure that you go, the more risky it is. Now, already at the level of fact, you're taking a chance, right? It may be a fact that you voted for whoever you voted for, and that might be a fact that's provocative. You may share a fact about your income, how much you make or don't make. I don't know. There's lots of facts that are facts. You are who you are, and that might be a little bit dicey or racy for some people. And so you have to make the decision in the moment at that wedding, after a couple drinks, how much facts you're going to share. Now, the third level of disclosure gets even riskier, and that is opinion. This is where it gets a little dicey because people have differing opinions and they may not agree with your opinion. And so opinion is the third levels. And I'm sorry, I keep getting distracted because I literally have had 7 texts just since I've started this live. And so I'm going to do my best to navigate this. I may need to end this live early. And so let me just do this person. Okay. And so opinion, if you share your viewpoints on politics, on money, on the economy, on anything like that, it just set you anything that's religion, it really can set you up. And so, we have a veterans group here, and we have one. I keep getting feedback about this one person in the veterans group who likes to bring up provocative topics, and he's extraordinarily opinionated. And what I appreciate about this group is they're challenging him. But what's interesting is he's the lone person who uh, has these feelings, these opinions, I should say. And he is, with the 12 to 15 people, they don't share the same opinion. And so the clinician who runs that group came to me and said, well, should we ask him to leave? And I said, well, no, this is a perfect opportunity for a group. They are bonded. They've been together for months, and not everybody's going to agree, and we're going to have differences of opinion, and that's got to be okay. And so how that group navigates this relationship with somebody they disagree with has everything to say about how they're going to do relationship with him and others. We don't all agree. In fact, I've learned in my years that we are much more different and disparate than alike in our opinions, and that's just the way it is. And so we have to understand and acknowledge, whether you agree or not, people are going to have different points of view, different lifestyles, different ways of doing things than you would. People are going to raise their kids differently than you would. People are going to vote for different people than you would, and so on. And that's the norm. That's actually the norm. So this idea that we should just all agree with everything. And so at the wedding, at the table of 10, when you are talking, and just, if they say, I was at this is cute. It's a story. So you recall a while ago now, I think it was 2015 or 16, the Supreme Court legalized federally same-sex unions, right? And I'm in a same-sex union, and so Rick and I got married for the third time and are living happily ever after. But we were sitting in then McCarran Airport, now Harry Reid Airport, and we were at the California Pizza Kitchen there, and we're sitting there, and next to us, and there's a banquet, and then there's tables of two, and there's like the booth thing, and then there's tables of two that are all lined up. Well, we sit down, and there's an elderly, like a couple in their 60s, early 70s, very well put together. But the woman was very beautiful, very elegant, very high hair, blonde, a lot of makeup, beautifully dressed, beautiful, accessories, and I could hear a Southern accent. And then the guy had a big cowboy hat, and the cowboy hat, big belt buckle, big tummy, big guy, very Southern, very. And I found out, and then hello, and how are you doing? You're from. Where are you from? Oh, we're from Texas. We're going home. We've just had a wonderful week in Las Vegas. And where are you guys going? Oh, we're going wherever we were going. And the wife, I think, picked up pretty quickly that we were a couple. We don't hold hands. We don't do anything that was a public display of affection at all. But then the guy who is sitting, I'm sitting next to the woman, and the guy is in the chair facing me, looks me square in the eye, and says, and I'm going to be a little irreverent. It's a line. He goes, "Can you believe the Supreme Court gave those F words, FAGGOTS, the right to marry?" Now, Rick and I, if you are even remotely sensitive or aware, could see that maybe we were a same-sex couple, but it is what it is. Now, the wife her eyes got really big, and she just was like, okay, honey, well, we don't really want to talk about that. Now, this would be a great example of over disclosure. No relationship, no rapport, sitting there. And first thing out of his mouth isn't, "Hey, how are you? My name is Tom, and I'm from Texas. It's nice to meet you." Is, "Can you believe?" And then he's out with his opinion that kind of flew in the face of our opinion. Now we didn't do anything. We didn't say anything. We didn't have a fight. We kind of, we're used to it. We just kind of went on. But the poor wife was just so uncomfortable. And we got over it. And she kind of redirected him and distracted him and held a, "Oh, no, honey, look over here. Let's talk about something else." And we got through it. It was no big deal. It really wasn't. We're used to it. It's not a big deal. But people do have their opinions. So my joke is, when you're at the wedding and you have strong opinions about the bridesmaids' dresses or something, Do you share that opinion about the bridesmaids' dresses? Probably not, unless you've had a bunch of drinks and then you kind of, with the lowering of inhibitions, you can over disclose and become kind of obnoxious, and I've been there. We've all been there, and that kind of thing. And that again, what it does is undermines the likelihood that these people will want to continue a relationship with you, like the person in the grocery store line or the person on the airplane that just not literally vomits, but word they over disclose and tell you more. Now, if we go into the deepest level of disclosure, this is called feelings and emotions. And there you go. And I didn't put a number 4. So sorry. When people share their deepest feelings, their innermost thoughts, their vulnerabilities, this is a deep level of disclosure. And it requires a fairly large relationship in order to accommodate those feelings. Now, emotions can be anger, can be frustration, can be sadness, fear, hurt, guilt, whatever it is. And what happens in therapy is that the therapist or the coach is doing their best to create a safe place for the client or the patient to express emotion, because emotion is the stuff is that we call baggage that festers, and left untreated is what causes depression and anxiety and all sorts of host of other things. And so that's the therapeutic process. At the wedding, after a few drinks, and your ex is on the stage, it might not be the time to talk about how sad you are that your ex is marrying this other person, and so on. So you get the drift. So these are the levels of disclosure. Now, how this applies to you and why you would care is that we navigate these quite naturally, and I wouldn't resist it. Meaning, I wouldn't, just because you're the kind of person who has to tell it like it is right away, you're going to get feedback very quickly in a social setting or in a public setting that people don't want to go that deep right away. And whether you like chit chat or not, now this also bumps up against your um, Myers-Briggs score, which is basically, are you an introvert or are you an extrovert? I am an introvert. I recharge alone. I spend increasingly more time alone. And so I would, and then if you are an extrovert, maybe you are the person who's the life of the party, who wants to be friends with everybody, wants to get to know everybody. That's great. In a relationship, it's important. In any kind of relationship, friendship, you need to understand that maybe who you're dealing with is of a different type than you. They're not as extroverted. Now, opposites attract, man. Rick, my partner, knows no strangers. He knows everybody. He's the mayor. He knows everybody in our apartment building. He knows everybody at work. Everybody knows him. People disclose like crazy to him, and he tolerates it very well, and it goes very, very well, and they love it. Now, I'm more reserved. Now, what I run the risk of is people thinking that I'm conceited or I'm stuck up or I'm not friendly. So I do my best to be open, but my natural tendency is not to tell everybody my life's story in a social situation. I'm the one that's going to be more quiet, more reserved. Now, however you do it is fine, but you can benchmark in relationships of all kinds. How's that working for you? So those are the levels of disclosure, very basic, rudimentary building blocks of relationship. Second model I want to talk about are the love languages. So let's move into romantic relationships. Gary Chapman has written a book called The 5 Love Languages. It's been in the public discourse for a number of years now. I recommend it in couples counseling. We all have basic needs. And what Gary Chapman has done is isolated, he calls them love languages, but basically these are 5 aspects to being in relationship of a romantic sort where the partner has these needs. And so I'm going to run these down, and I'll write them down. So actually the book is called, and you can look these up, The 5 Love Languages by, excuse the typo, by Gary Chapman. Number 1 is quality time. These are in no particular order. Sometimes your partner just wants to spend time with you. doing things. It doesn't matter what it is, they just want quality time, meaning undivided attention. And what suffers a lot in romantic relationships is as we get married and we have kids and we get distracted, we have careers, is that if you are the kind of person, now Rick and I both love quality time, and we have figured out how to do quality time. It's not about the length of time, it's about the quality, meaning we love traveling, and so traveling for us is really a great thing. Being on an airplane, being in a car, driving, doing a road trip, that kind of thing. Just going exploring in a new place is really great quality time, and that meets both of our needs. Now, and I'm going to go through them pretty quickly. And what I want you to start self-evaluating is which are yours. And I'm talking romance now. I'm talking about in with your primary relationship with a relationship with whether it's a spouse or a significant other. I want you to evaluate. Yep, I really like that thing. Okay. So number two is words of affirmation. Sometimes we need to hear that we do a good job. We need to hear that we're great. We need to hear positive, affirmative statements from our partner that indicates that something that we do or say or are is really great for them. And now there are other people, and I could almost hear your thoughts. Some of you are going, yeah, I don't need that. I don't need them to tell me I'm awesome. I know I'm awesome. I don't need them. I don't need anybody to tell me I'm awesome. I know I'm awesome. Some people do. Some people need words of affirmation. They need to know that the dinner was good. They need to know that you planned that vacation was amazing. They need to know that you look great. They need to know. They need to hear you compliment their peach pie. That you're gonna compliment their selection of wine. That they're gonna compliment your abilities with the kids, and so on. Now, as I'm talking, think about your need. What do you need from a partner? And then think about the partners you currently have or have had, and start to think about, okay, yeah, I remember that one. Boy, they really were always soliciting, like they were always like fishing for compliments. Now, this gets back to my earlier statement about if they're repeating themselves a lot and saying, well, how did I do? And what do you appreciate about me? Or what did you notice? And did you really like that dinner? Did you like that restaurant? Did you like that trip? Did you like dot, dot, dot? That's them needing words of affirmation from you. And you can save yourself a lot of time and heartache by just getting over it and going, wow, honey, babe, bae, whatever you call them, it was really great when you did dot, 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 or I really appreciate the way you did dot, 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 or gee, you look great today, or gee, that, and you just got to do it. Now, I can also hear some of you going, well, I shouldn't have to. It's romance. They should know. Yeah, I know. And in an ideal world, no, you shouldn't have to. But I'm going to say, if you want to keep your marriage together, you want to keep your relationship together, and this is all you got to do is just every once in a while throw them a bone and say, wow, great job. Good, attaboy, good job. Love that thing. So proud of you, whatever it is. Some people need those words of affirmation, and sometimes you do too. Now, I think I do need that from Rick. I don't think he needs it from me. He's a really great cook, and I compliment his cooking all the time, and he's, yeah, whatever. Doesn't seem to need that. I need it. I like to hear that I've done a good job like that. All right, number three, gifts. Gifts, either giving or receiving. Some people will show their affection by buying you stuff. Some of you don't need it. Some of you love it. You want that watch, that purse, those flowers, the whatever it is. And you get to evaluate both from the giving and receiving aspect. Are gifts important? I can tell you that in our relationship, not a big significant thing. We don't do birthdays. We'll go out to dinner. We don't do anniversaries, although I got this beautiful Swiss watch for my 25th wedding anniversary last year. And I love it. I coveted it. I was completely surprised. It was a beautiful romantic gesture. Didn't need it, didn't want it, didn't think about it. And I don't think either of us really need gifts. Now, for some of you out there, maybe you do. And it's okay to say, I need gifts. I want gifts. And I know that doesn't sound very romantic. I have one couple I worked with where it was a male female couple. She wanted yellow roses, yellow long stemmed roses. That was what she wanted. Any occasion to give a gift, that's what she wanted. Not red, not pink, not carnations, not daffodils, yellow long-stemmed roses. So in couples counseling, we were going through these love languages, and she said that, and he goes, "That is so specific." And, and she's going, "Yeah, that's what I want. You want to please me? That's what I want. That's all I want. Once a year, twice a year, birthday, anniversary, maybe, yeah, special occasions, surprise me. Surprise me, make it spontaneous, but make it spontaneous, but it has to be exactly this thing." And I'm telling you, if that's all it takes to please your partner, shut up, get him the yellow long stemmed roses. If that's all it is, it's not a Rolex, it's not a diamond, just shut up and get him the roses. And I know this sounds really non romantic, but this is how it goes. Okay, that's gifts. Number 4, physical touch and bonding. Now, this is all over the map. Some people think it means sex. And for some people, it means sex. Other people, it means cuddling. Other people, it means snuggling. Other people, it means sleeping together. Other people, it means we have separate bedrooms with locks on the door, and I don't want to be anywhere near that person when I'm sleeping because they snore. And you get to work this out. Um, I am a cuddler. I am very affectionate in my private life. I don't have a lot of cuddlers around me. Sorry. So, not married to one. And so I'm okay. Something I like to do, but it's not a deal breaker, but you get to also navigate that, and it's everything. And again, I work with married couples all the time. It's everything from, we have to sleep, joined at the hip and spooning and cuddling, every minute of the night to, don't touch me, I'm going to the couch or whatever. And you get to navigate that, physical touch and bonding is all over the map. Now that can be when we're in public, uh, and I can't imagine this, I do this, but hold my hand, or I want you, partner, to demonstrate that I'm your partner, right? So I want you to hold my hand, or I want you to open doors for me, or I want you to do some physical gesture, to indicate to the public that we are together. And however you negotiate that, others of you, don't need that, and you get to evaluate. Um, you get to evaluate that for yourself. Now, in couples counseling, this is the negotiation. And I know it sounds decidedly non romantic, but this is what we go through. Well, how do you like to do it? Well, I sure wish he or she would do this. Okay. Then I talk to the other partner. I say, "Are you willing to do that?" Well, what's the big deal? Who cares? Well, apparently they care. And if you were sensitive enough, you should know that they care. And now that you do know that they care, you might want, if really all it takes is to grab the hand while you're driving in the car, get over it. Just grab the hand. I'm sorry. I know this is not like romance 101. If all it takes to please your partner is to hold their hand in the movie theater, what's the big deal? And I'm using, PG things. Sex typically is a whole nother negotiation that we also do in a relationship counseling. And like anything else, there are developmental stages in relationships. I'm not going to go into those details today, but understand that people have very different sexual needs, very different sexual practices, and I have couples that come in and they want to work on their relationship and they haven't had sex in 20 years, and it's fine. They don't need sex. They don't want sex. Their sexual days are over. And then I have other couples that come in, they've been together 50 years, and man, like bunnies. I mean, they're just absolutely very sexually driven. That's another negotiation. Now, I do have some couples that come in that have very different sexual needs, and that's when it gets dicey. Had one couple a few years ago, they were in their early 50s. He wanted sex every day. I mean, not exaggerating, like multiple times a day, more than was practical, and she didn't want it at all. Like she was postmenopausal, just didn't really have any desire to have sex at all. And he's like a bunny rabbit, and she's like not so interested. So we negotiated it. And I know it sounds non-romantic, but we're gonna have to get over it. And so in the course of I think we worked together for about 6 months. Um, she met him. I don't think she met him completely halfway, because completely halfway would have been like 3 days a week. I think she met him, in a place that was more reasonable than not at all. And so that's really good. Oh, great. So I have somebody helping the crisis that's happening right now. Because I would have had to end the call today, and I didn't want to do that. So we have a lot of people here that can help. Okay, number 5, and the last one for the 5 love languages, acts of service. Acts of service. Now, different than gifts. Gifts are tangible things you give to someone. Acts of service are exactly what they sound, is when either you enjoy being waited on, you enjoy a foot rub, you enjoy them painting the house, cleaning the house, doing the dishes. You enjoy them doing things for you, you know, that you just really enjoy that. I am very fortunate that I don't actually lift a finger and I enjoy it. It's not one of my love languages. I don't absolutely need it. And I'm not going to go into my own personal details, but it's nice. It's nice to have. So then you get to reconcile, do I need, and I'm using the word need very specifically. You get to declare your needs, and it doesn't mean you're needy, but for you to be able to say, look, I really like words of affirmation. I love for you to tell me I'm beautiful. I really love acts of service. I love when you mow the lawn. Again, not romantic, but I don't need to have sex every day. I don't need gifts. I don't need this, but I really like it when, you pick up the kids from school. And it can be very small, small things. And then you as a couple get to negotiate what would that look like. And again, these are very small, small things. They don't have to be big, grand gestures, right? One of the things that and again, in our household, we have division of labor, meaning there's certain things I take care of, there's certain things that he takes care of. We live with our 35-year-old son, certain things he takes care of. And it's great, it works out. I am not mechanical at all. I mean, you do not want me in charge of mechanical things. I'm not going to go into how bad it actually is, but it's pretty humiliating. If you want me to fix something, I will make it worse. And I know that, and everybody in our household knows it. So they don't ask me. Acts of service for me is not about fixing the toilet or fixing anything, fixing a car, you know. But acts of service, what I am good at, I'm good at technology. I'm good at travel. I book all the travel. I buy all the airline tickets. I do all the travel reservations. I enjoy it. They enjoy it because they don't want to do it. I do all the technology. I pay all the bills, not with the money, meaning I don't, how could I say this? I pay the bills. We share the expenses. I'm the one that makes the payments and sets up the accounts and all that kind of stuff. That's what I like to do. I like being organized. I love technology. I love auto pay. I love, all that kind of stuff. Other people in my household do not. They don't want to have to deal with the leases and the mortgages and the payments and all that stuff. I don't mind doing it. So there is a measure of acts of service in our family, and we just have 3 of us now in the nuclear household right now. Um, I I would love it if my son Chris would pick me up from the airport. It's not happening. The airport freaks him out. Way too many cars, way too intense, gets lost, can't figure it out. Rick loves to pick me up from the airport. Absolutely loves it. Loves to take me to the airport. No big deal. So you with your partner get to negotiate, if this is important to you at all, what that would look like and how you can meet each other's needs this way. So taken together, these 5 love languages form the foundation of understanding each other, right? Understanding what's important to you. And my opinion is, and you don't have to agree with it, you can certainly read the book. It's an easy book to read. The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman is really about understanding yourself, understanding what's important to you, and also in turn acknowledging what's important to your partner and sacrificing a little bit. The cliche about human relationships in a romantic sense is it's compromise. It's always compromise. And if you're unwilling to compromise, you shouldn't be in a relationship, because it is. Now, I've been, well, gosh, it's 20, coming up on 26 years. It's great. Is it a walk? And those of you that have been together with your people for a while, you understand what I mean. Is it a blissful, kumbaya party every day? No. But as I'm getting older, I so appreciate, the relationship that I have and the relationships that I have, where there is this mutuality and this give and take. And so the sign that you're not meeting your needs very well, usually the first sign is, and I'm just going to say, I'm going to put this in the chat, signs you are not meeting your needs in relationship are number one, frustration. Frustration. You're just frustrated with them, with the situation. And it's a visceral feeling. It's like, I'm just frustrated, right? This may be where you go to your best friend and vent about your partner. Well, God, they do this or they don't do this. They do this and they don't do this. And then your partner's going to say, you should get into couples counseling to negotiate these things. And number two, I'm going to say resentment. If you feel like you're doing all of the work all the time and you're not getting a lot back. Now, this happens in relationship all the time. And I'm going to use some social norms that are probably going to sound sexist about gender roles. But, historically, the man would go to work and the woman would stay home years ago, 50, 60, 70 years ago. And it could be argued I was raised by a single parent in the 60s. My father had died when I was a baby, and so she was the mom. She was the mom and the dad. She worked her butt off. She took care of 3 kids. I mean, she did a great job. And what was missing in that relationship, to the extent there was that she didn't have a lot of bandwidth for affection and love and all the as children. She was pretty much, she'd work all day. She'd come home. She'd make dinner, or she'd bring dinner home, and we would have dinner late. She would have a couple drinks. She'd go to bed. And there wasn't this loving, nurturing earth mother at home baking bread and, cooking, gourmet meals. I can look back on it and appreciate what she taught me, appreciate her hard work. Very difficult in the 60s. I think it's always difficult to be a single parent. So if you're a single parent, my hat's off to you. I mean, my heart goes out to you. It's a very difficult job. And so it is not to say, because parenting, as you know, sorry, but you can kind of never win. It's like it's just not enough hours in the day. And if you got to work and you got to pay bills and all that sort of thing. So what I noticed, and this came up in my own therapy, excuse me, there wasn't a lot of nurturing. It was very pragmatic. It was very much got to work, got to pay the bills, got to put a roof over our head, got to pay, got to feed you, got to do this, got to do that. Sorry, you got bullied at school. See if your brother can handle that. I got to work. And I think many of you that come from working class households understand what I mean, that growing up, particularly my generation or Generation X, I'm a baby boomer, Generation X was like, suck it up, buttercup, sorry you don't feel safe. You better figure out something else to do. Today, I actually see it as progress that children are much more, and I work with children and adolescents, are much more expressive about what they need and much more demanding and a bit entitled actually about that they need safety and they need accommodations and what they need, and it's all about them. So I kind of sometimes roll my eyes because I do see parents bending over backwards to accommodate these kids and make the special school and the special this and the safe this and all that kind of stuff. And so a person of my generation who was raised by a single parent is going, we drank out of a garden hose and you need pH balanced 9.0 Essentia water, come on. And Joe Coy, a Filipino comedian, does just a beautiful thing. So if you want to watch, anyway, Joe Coy, Koy, comedian, beautiful shtick on what it was like to grow up Generation X and to have a, Generation Alpha or Z or millennial kid who just, my water has to be, pH balanced and like that. And I just laugh because I'm like, really? And there's all sorts of stuff online about, and I just love these memes and these content creators that talk about, when I was a kid, because it was my story. It's like, yeah, something about, we didn't have seatbelts and we had jungle gyms and there wasn't safety precautions, and that we're still alive at all is just amazing. And, we were sent out, like, well, why didn't you have pH balanced water, Kangen water in your house? Well, we drank out of a garden hose. Well, why would you do that? That's disgusting. Well, because we were kicked out of the house at dawn and we were told not to come home till the street lights went on. Now, of course, younger generations go, but there are predators out there. There are pedophiles out there. Well, There weren't, if there were, we didn't know about it, and all we knew is we could not be in the house in the summer during the day, and so if you got thirsty, you rode your bike up to somebody's house, you went over to the garden hose, and you drank water, and also, we didn't drink that much water, and none of us died. We also didn't wear we'd have car seats, we also didn't, on and on and on. My mom, I'm gonna leave you with this because 'cause we're about ending. So, you have the love languages, you have rapport building. Um, my brother tells a story about my mom had me when she was 48 years old. 44, 45, or 48, depending on the birth certificate you look at. So I'm not going to argue with how old my mother was, but I'm thinking she was probably 48 when I was born. My dad was 50. She smoked cigarettes and drank throughout her entire pregnancy. So if you were to meet my brother, he would say, yeah, our mom drank and smoked. This is back in the 50s when I was born. Our mom drank and smoked. And we thought that Pat, me, was either going to be a genius or going to be a mongoloid. The mongoloid is a term for Down syndrome. That was the old term for it back in the day. Developmentally disabled or mentally retarded, as we used to call it. And he will tell you that story and he'll laugh. And it's all good natured, giving me a hard time, right? It's my older brother. And then he'll pause for effect, So he'll say, yeah, we weren't sure how Pat was going to turn out, either a genius or a mongoloid. He'll pause for effect. And we're still not sure. Like the jury's still out whether I was delayed or not. And it's fun. It's in good fun. And so the accommodations and the how we bend over backwards for our children, I think is wonderful. I think it's great. I think it's amazing. And then the flip side of that is I get concerned for kids who don't ever have to struggle. They don't ever have to do anything, and that everything's provided for them. They don't have to work, and they don't have to get a job, and they go to private school, and they, kind of spoiled rotten kind of thing. So that's has its own consequences that we'll talk about on another day. So I appreciate all of you. I hope that was helpful. Go out, build your relationships, take a look at how you're disclosing yourself, what safety you're creating, take a look at your love languages, at least do a self-assessment about what you need in relationship, and then don't apologize for having needs. You get to have needs. You get to tell your partner what you need, not in a bitchy, nasty way, but in a, gee, I saw Dr. Patrick or I saw Kumu or whatever, get the book, give them the book, go through it together. You don't need to be in therapy to do it. It's a very easy book. It's a very inexpensive book on Amazon, The Five Love Languages by Gary Chapman. So with that, I will conclude another YouTube Live today. Have a great weekend, everybody.